Metal and Coffee, everybody, right here. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing excellent. How are you?
I am great. I am super excited about our conversation tonight. So thank you so much for taking the time and being here. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, I feel very honored to be the first guest. So thank
Yeah,
you.
you are the first guest, so I appreciate you putting up with me while we're feeling this out, and I'm kind of getting my feet wet with it. So obviously, you are in science and technology. This is what you do, but obviously you're more than that. So just tell us, for those of who are in the chat who don't necessarily know you, who have never met you before, who are you? What's your background? What kind of stuff do you like to do?
Well, hello. My name's Ebonie. I'm Metal and Coffee as well, known mostly on socials. I'm a full-time web developer. I've been a full-time dev for 4.5 years. It is my first dev job after turning 30. I grew up in, I guess, a computery family. My dad has his degree in computer science, and he doing a lot of data sysadmin stuff. So I did have my first computer at an early age, and it wasn't for learning purposes, it was the game. So if I broke it, I had to fix it. So that's what a lot of my early experience came from. Even though my intention definitely was to get a computer science degree, don't have one. I have a degree in IT, and I didn't start programming until, like I mentioned before, until I was 30, until I decided that I didn't like the current job I was doing, and I wanted to revisit my previous like interest in programming. So that's what I do now. I love the sector that I'm in. I'm in web development. I love building websites. I love building web applications, everything with the web. I mostly work at PHP and some JavaScript as well. And yeah, that's mostly what I do. And also, of course, if you're wondering where Metal and Coffee comes from, I'm a metal DJ. I've been one for 14 years. And I started in college. I started at a college radio station, and I've been doing it on and off ever since. So that's me.
That's okay. So I have to back up a little bit. So metal DJ, like I've had a lot of like odd jobs here and there in my day, but metal DJ, how exactly did that come about?
Well, I've always been super into music. Like, music has been just a big part of my life. I don't necessarily create music, although I do have my guitar in the background that I mess around with sometimes. But I've just been a huge supporter all my life. And I've always been into hard rock. I wasn't really exposed to metal until I was college, but I was always listening to the pop punk and harder rock growing up, like, Simple Plan, Green Day. I was in that sector, like Eve 6.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know all about it.
And so when I finally got to college, I'm like, hey, I had this short little interest in, like, I want to be a PR specialist. I want to interview bands. I want to do that and that. And so, of course, to get closer to that, I joined the radio station. And then they were like, you can't play mainstream stuff here. Of course. So that meant that I needed to figure out some new stuff, explore some new underground stuff. And that's when I got introduced into metal and the harder, just, the harsher side of all that.
Nice.
And that's when I really just, discovered my love for it.
That's amazing. Yeah. I actually started college as a music major. And so I love music. I'm super, super eclectic, and I have conversations about that all the time of, I go from anywhere from like classical and musicals and stuff like that all the way into, heavy metal and, metalcore and stuff like that. So I totally resonate with that. Absolutely.
It's awesome.
So you said you're primarily a web developer, but you don't necessarily have like a traditional like comp sci degree. You have more of like an IT like operations degree. Mm-hmm. So what made you decide to get a degree that was in that? And then like, how did you actually funnel your way into development from there?
So I definitely always had an interest in being a programmer, coder, developer. Even before I went to college, because I was exposed to it. I had already done sysadmin things because my father was a sysadmin, so I had experience building just tiny little bash scripts in the terminal, Linux, all that. I was kind of familiar with kind of that stuff already. So even though, I started out with the intention of getting a degree in computer science, it was hard. And even though I really wanted the degree, I kind of had a bad experience my sophomore year because I was in a binary, I'm pretty sure I nailed the class name, but binary trees and recursion, that kind of class. And even though everyone is having trouble with that class, it's very hard. But I really wanted to, I really wanted to try to do better. And so I went to the teaching assistant for just some help and guidance, and he completely demotivated me from wanting to even be in the major. He was a white male, middle-aged white male. You can just see the lack of confidence he had in me, and he wasn't really even trying to help me. He was like, nope, that's not right, you're not getting it right. And I'm just sitting there, I'm just are you gonna help me get it right? So yeah, I wasn't really as tough-skinned either when I was in college. I was very shy, and it took me a lot to even ask someone for help. So the fact that I had that experience where I was just he literally told me oh, maybe it's not for you, maybe you should try something else. And I'm okay, actually. And so I did. I went to IT, which ended up being, not that IT is easy, but also IT is an umbrella term. A lot of things can fall under IT. And so what ended up happening is it was essentially a very easy degree for me to acquire, because I was touching a lot of different aspects of IT. It wasn't anything very specific, and I ended up getting my bachelor's of science in IT because I just thought that was not for me anymore. Even though, not to mention that I was one of the only girl in my class, of course, and one of maybe 2 people of color in my class. And honestly, I was getting through all of that, and I know it's hard. That's hard enough as well, but I was getting through all of that because, I had a group of friends who were we're all struggling together in that major. But it was that experience that I was just all right, I'm not going to continue showing up to this class, this major, especially when this guy's here who clearly told me that it's not for me, and I'm just going to go to another major.
Oh my gosh.
So
yeah, that's just awful. I have such a hard time when I hear about people's experiences like this, because I don't understand that elitist mindset that a lot of people have when it comes to programming. When I first started programming, I used to spend hours upon hours upon hours fighting with a compiler, trying to get something to work. I didn't know what I was doing. And I've been in the industry for over 13 years now, and obviously I'm not perfect. I'm still, new stuff is coming out every single week practically in programming. You never arrive. And I don't understand why you would have somebody who's, especially in an education profession, who is telling somebody, this really isn't for you. Or no, you didn't get that right. Yeah, just leave. I don't understand that at all. And especially obviously this is something that I can't understand because I do fall into the middle-aged white male category. So I don't understand what it's like to be in a position where I'm the minority in the group. There's nobody in the class who looks like me that I identify with or anything like that. And so how does that affect you when you're in that scenario, when you're struggling and you're beating your head against the wall, trying to figure that out? What goes through your mind when you're in that situation?
Well, I will say I'm obviously, with all of my interests, I've always been a weird person, the outcast, non-stereotypical. So I've always been sort of used to being around people who don't look like me, because with all my interests, heavy music, metal, kind of already being introduced to programming and all that. And I was kind of just used to not fitting in. And so at that point when I entered college, I think that's what kind of made me a little bit easier for me to continue to get through computer science classes, because I was kind of like, all right, I'm used to being the only one of me here, so I can continue with that. With that, even though it is mentally, I'm not gonna say it's not mentally hard either way. Even though I was used to it, I was still struggling with still being the only one of me and not seeing people like me. It does wear on you, it does wear you down. And also it's just, sure, you can be strong and put up with it as much as you can, but everyone has a point where they're like, okay, I just need a break.
Yeah,
I just
absolutely.
need a break. And so, and I think, obviously that bad experience was that point where I'm just like, all right, I've kind of been battling this outcast, like no one looks like me, showing up, not being able to relate to anyone. I've been battling this for too long. And this TA, hearing him say that to me, I think I'm all right. I'm just gonna leave. And even though it definitely was heartbreaking, it wasn't me just like deciding like, okay, I'm gonna listen to him. It was me like, crying hysterically and being very heartbroken that someone would say that to me and tell me that I can't do something. And of course, and I definitely give credit to my like amazing late mom. I called her and she like literally called the school and like, I don't want to talk to
Oh yeah, yeah,
I want to talk to
absolutely.
this TA, like, how dare you, da da da, and she really tried to resolve this situation, and she did. And I had to talk with the actual teacher, the person actually teaching the course, and he tried to smooth things over. But at that point, I'm just like, I'm good. I think I've exhausted my strength for now, and I'm gonna walk away. So that's what I end up doing.
Yeah. So you're in this position and you're like, all right, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to kind of make a pivot away from programming, and I'm going to go more towards like the IT kind of operations side of things. So you make that pivot, and where do you go from there?
I don't think I really mentioned in my intro where I'm from. I'm from Philadelphia. I didn't grow up here, but I did most of my education here. So I went to Drexel University. And Drexel is one of those schools that has co-op programs. If you're not familiar with what a co-op program is, basically you have a set amount of years where you're swapping between working at an internship and then swapping between doing your classes.
Okay.
So once I switched over to IT, it was like right at that time where I needed to be actually working one semester and then studying the next. So I started experimenting with IT jobs, help desk, and which was pretty much an experience. And also not that great experience.
Oh no.
And and that was expected. I'm proud of myself for going through it, honestly. But as a woman, just strictly as a woman, working as a help desk technician, usually you get people who don't want to talk to a woman, they want to talk to a man. They want to get help from a man. So I learned real quick that was not my calling.
Yeah.
IT help desk was not it. I did it for 6 months, but that was not for me. But then I began to explore other aspects of IT by working as a systems analyst and working as a, I guess in general, systems engineer. And then after college, that's when I actually started working and diving into the government contracting aspect of work. And that's where I spent all of my time before I got my first dev job.
Wow. Yeah. Wow, that's a heck of a pivot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're in this opportunity where you get like some hands-on experience. You get to go from, I'm learning, I'm at university, and then this co-op program gives you some hands-on, so you go back and forth, right? Is that the way that works?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, that's awesome. So, because I know like when I was in college, I was very fortunate to kind of stumble upon a programming internship. And all of the people that I was in class with, they were like, how did you get a job? What the heck? Hook me up. What is
Right.
because it's like the tech industry is so weird because it's like we expect everybody to come out of college with 3 years of experience. It's like there really is no room for people who are just trying to get into the industry. And so I think it's great that there are, obviously not everybody has that opportunity, but it's nice when you do have co-ops and internships and things like that, right?
Yeah,
So
totally.
so you go, you get this hands-on experience, you have another bad experience with help desk, you start doing some other like back end stuff. How did you come back around like full circle and get back into web development? Because we started out in web development or doing development and you completely dropped it. You're like, no, screw this, I'm done. Heck with y'all. And you go, and now here we are, and you're back at development. How do we loop back to this?
Well, so I guess I started working in government contracting in 2012, and I moved to Virginia, not that far from where I am now, not from Philly rather. And so, with that kind of job too, like I was taught everything I need to know on the job. Honestly, my degree wasn't really helpful, but it was cool for a moment. I was learning about space orbits. I can't tell you anything about it right now, but I had to learn all about that.
Nice.
So yeah, I was essentially operating satellites and learning and on launch teams and stuff like that. I know you wouldn't even think of that you wouldn't even think that I did that, but I did, and I totally forget that part of my life.
No, I think that we all have those projects that like you have to get like super deep on something and you have to learn like all of this stuff. And then like a month after the project, all of that has leaked out your ear. You can't recall any of it. Like I think we've all had that.
Absolutely. And so about 5 years into that career, I just realized that this was the career that you are either going to stay here forever or you need to get out right now, because this is a very specific skill set and you're building yourself up to only work in government contracting, which I wasn't a fan of. I was kind of over corporate culture. It's just like high school all over again. And so it wasn't feeling it, wasn't feeling it. And so I ended up getting a similar job that I had been working in Virginia and Philly. So I moved back to Philly. And then I realized that the Philly tech scene was super, super booming and interesting. And that as I encountered more people that were doing similar things to what I eventually wanted to do. And I remember a very specific experience where I was in this Uber, and the Uber driver was like, yeah, I'm teaching myself coding, and I'm just doing this on the side, and I'm gonna make my coin and do my thing. And then I'm like, all right, I guess that's my calling to start doing the same thing. And so even though I had an hour commute there and back to where I was living at the time, I was like, all right, guess every night we're going to be studying coding. We're going to do free code camp. We're going to do Code Academy. We're going to start going to community coding classes that are offered on the weekend and in my town, obviously. And we're going to start joining groups for people who are new to coding and want to learn together. So I did that for about a year. Pretty much didn't have a life, which, I accepted because I was trying to learn something. I wanted to get out of my current job. And then through doing all of that, and through I guess unintentionally networking, because I hate networking. But the more classes I took, the more groups I went to, you naturally meet people that way. And then I ended up meeting my current boss at one of the classes that she was teaching, which I think was super, super interesting and cool because, I guess she saw the way that I was asking questions, even though I was a complete newbie. I was asking the right questions and, kind of picking up things a little faster than you normally would. And so she offered me an apprenticeship, which is basically just a kind of like a temporary job where you kind of feel it out and see if y'all are a good fit for each other. And ultimately I got hired within a month, even though it was a 3-month apprenticeship. They were like, all right, we'll take you.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So
that's
you're
right now.
so you're working full time, you're grinding it out at night teaching yourself how to code. So like out of all of the stuff that you tried, what do you think was like the best fit to help you learn? Because like I know that everybody has like their preferences. Like I personally learn best by watching videos and then trying stuff on my own. And then I've gotten involved in like communities of people to kind of help troubleshoot and rubber duck stuff. But like for you, what was your thing? Like what really clicked with you when you were trying to learn?
I've always been a big fan of following outside of the tech reading fundamental stuff. Once I've kind of read through that, I'm huge into doing tutorials. I'm not really a huge fan, even though I do it. I'm not a huge fan of doing video tutorials. I love doing article tutorials where they're really, really detailed out, especially when they explain concepts so well. I remember reading a very, very in-depth analysis on the CSS box model, and that's when it like really clicked for me how that works. But yeah, I don't have a very specific resource that I can think of, but like I spent a lot of time just Googling tutorials on how to do something in HTML, how to do something in CSS, how to do something in JavaScript, how to do something using all three. So I was really, really into doing that, how to do CSS animation. So I did a lot of that. And then I think the repetition of continuously building projects, that's what really eventually made things like really, really clear for me the more I used it.
Wow. Yeah, so I've actually had a lot of people approaching me recently. I've even had a family member reach out and they were like, hey, I really want to get into coding. How do I get started? And one of the things that I typically tell people is, first you got to figure out what kind of programming you want to do, which is kind of one of the hard things. Because like when I started programming, I didn't know what I wanted to do because it was all, code was code. It didn't really matter to me. So, I've talked to them about like identify what kind of stuff you want to build. Like, do you want to do web? Do you want to do, actual like desktop applications or mobile applications or something like that? And then I normally tell them go through the basic tutorials, start to get a feel for something, and then give yourself a real world project and go out and try to build it and work your way through it. So like when you were kind of going through that, learning and you started building projects, what kind of projects did you give yourself to hack on?
Well, I will say, I'll go back to around the 2015 era. I had just started my blog, Metal and Coffee. That's when Metal and Coffee was born because I decided I wanted to start writing reviews and all that. And so I decided that I wanted to build the website myself. So that was kind of like, I didn't choose it. I was like, I need it. So I'm going to build this website with no code. I used the WordPress and but going through the process of actually putting together a website, like choosing hosting, domain, and then, installing the application, et cetera, I think going through that process was like, made me realize that I like building websites. I like doing this. And so when I had decided and confirmed that I want to be a web developer, the top projects I probably ended up doing were building my blog site because I wanted to, start writing, building my portfolio site, or just building a presentation of my resume, pretty much. In terms of really, really diving into JavaScript and understanding how to manipulate the page, building a to-do list is also, of course, a kind of a staple JavaScript. Because that essentially you're learning how to CRUD, right? Create, read, update, delete. You're learning how that works and really kind of understand how that works. So I think those are the top three that come to mind for me as first projects.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I typically I think one of the very first things that I actually wrote was I think I did something simple like a phone list. Like it was just like a phone book, and I did it in .NET, and that was like one of my first like actual like full .NET applications.
Nice.
Anthurium likes your website, by the way.
Oh, thanks. It's so old, but thank you.
Yeah, so chat, if y'all are asking questions, I am keeping track of those in feature chat, and we will get to those towards the end of the session, so feel free to ask questions. I do want to kind of like fast forward, like, here we are, we're at today. You're a full-time web dev. You do that as your job. Like, what kind of, what is like your go-to, like, this is what I love to build thing? Like, what languages do you like to use, and what type of applications do you like to build?
I have been really, really enjoying, and this is actually something I learned on stream, but everything I really enjoy is mostly in JavaScript. So anything that I'll be building has been in JavaScript that I've really enjoyed building. As of recently, I've been diving into Node.js, server-side JavaScript. So, and I actually learned that on the stream when I started streaming like almost a year ago, and now I'm just like really, really engulfed in it. And so, especially like, I think for so long I had been super glued to the front end of things, which I mostly do front end, but like actively diving into the back end of things, working with like APIs, building your own API, spinning up your own server, building a server, just doing all that. I'll call it fun stuff, the fun.
It's totally fun. Yeah, absolutely.
So
We're all nerds here. It's okay.
But yeah, like I built my own Twitch bot. It is a very simple application, but like it's been so nice to have to come back to it each month and be like, oh, I can make this better. I can add this and continue on my Node knowledge, and also working with Express.js as well, with learning how that whole thing works. Another project I've been working on is honestly my Metal and Coffee redesign site, because I've built so many WordPress themes for everyone else but myself. So because of course I'm the last person, but I feel like this is a problem for all developers. Like, we'll build so much stuff for everyone else, but if you ask us if we have a portfolio site, most of the time we say no.
Absolutely.
So
it's like the mechanic never works on his own car, like,
yeah,
or their own car. Like I've never met anybody who ever like goes home and they're like, yeah, everything that I did today at my day job, I'm not going to do that for me. No,
exactly.
Never happens.
So I'm trying my best. This is my 2022 goal, is actually, no matter how simple it is, I'm just going to redesign metalandcoffee.com to include my portfolio and retain my post, even though I don't really write about music anymore, and to just have an easy way to showcase the cool things that I like to work on. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I've been kind of lurking in your streams. You've been doing some great work there. It's always fun to kind of hang out and chill, and it's really interesting like how many people drop into your stream and they're like, Metal Coffee, yep, I'm subscribing, let's go.
I love that.
Yeah, that seems to be just like the MO of everybody. They're like, I came and I saw code and then I heard Metal and Coffee, and yeah, I'm gonna follow now.
Yeah, and I will say, like, my streams, I've only had 4.5 years of developer experience. I'm not an expert. A lot of people in my streams know that, and they'll help me through a lot of the problems, which I appreciate.
Yeah, none of us are experts. We're all noobs.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like, anytime I do stuff on stream, it's normally something I've never done before, and the entire time I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing, chat. Just help me. It's okay. I think the problem is like, I think that we all suffer from imposter syndrome. Like I know that I do, and you would think that from being a developer for so long that I wouldn't, but I think that it's the people who really know what they don't know genuinely have imposter syndrome. If I meet a developer who doesn't have any form of imposter syndrome, I start to get worried about that person. just to be real, because I think it's this like healthy reverence for the profession and for how quickly everything changes. Like, nobody is ever going to know everything. Everybody has the stuff that they are really, really good at, and then you have stuff that you're not so good at. So like, while I feel like I'm a pretty decent JavaScript developer and I know .NET fairly well, I do not do well with CSS. CSS breaks my brain, and I just fall apart when it comes to CSS. So I do a ton of Googling and a ton of like copy paste code and tweak it and manipulate it on my own to try to get it to do what I need it to do. But I mean, it's a lot of like, how the heck does this work? And me playing around in the IDE with it. that's the way I attack that stuff. And so like one of the things that I love about Twitch is, for the most part, like every once in a while you get a troll or two, but like for the most part in my experience, everybody who is in chat is genuinely invested and trying to help.
Right.
You know, even if you get like the occasional backseat coder who's like, oh, why did you do it this way? You should be doing this. Or, you know, the random people who drop in and you're like, tailwind everything, or, you know, whatever the case is. It's like, yeah, like I think for the most part, everybody's coming from a good place there. So I do want to kind of circle back just a little bit and like ask you, what kind of obstacles do you face now being female, being a person of color? Like what are the things that you deal with being somebody in the tech industry now?
Well, I feel like being fully remote now has like kind of taken a lot of that, you know, the front facing pressure of like meeting someone in person who, you know, is like doubting your abilities. But I will say that, you know, and my name is Ebonie. I mentioned that before, but I feel like when I'm interacting with a client or a fellow dev of another agency that I have to collaborate with, a lot of my struggles comes with them assuming that I'm, you know, inferior at my job due to being a woman and due to being Black, you know, because you can tell that I'm Black because my name Ebonie means black. So so that is mostly what I struggle with. I'm thankful that I work for a company, a very small agency owned by 2 women who are really, really, you know, just make sure that we're all handled well. They handle anyone who comes up at us sideways. My coworkers are very, very cool, very, very understanding. So most of that stuff really just stems from external clients and developers. So, and like I mentioned before, my bosses handle that. So I feel like my answer would be different if I worked for like a corporate situation. And I do obviously have experience with that. But since I'm thankfully not in that situation anymore, I'm in a very accepting agency who really makes sure that we thrive and, you know, learn what we want to learn, and who won't let us be talked to any kind of way. The experiences definitely have been minimal. I can count on one hand how many of those experiences that I just described where a developer will like, you know, assume my abilities like inferior, and like I just remember one time that it just made me laugh because I was interacting with a developer and telling them that this very, very specific widget that I had read documentation on was not working due to XYZ. And you can tell when they literally don't even read what you're saying. They don't do their own research. They just want to spend this time to be like, no, you're wrong. It's the most insane thing sometimes, because I'm like, did you even like begin to read my email? If you would kind of see where I was coming from. But no, you just wanted to say I'm wrong first. That's all you cared about. But yeah.
So do you think that working for a female-owned company is one of the reasons why you haven't had those negative experiences, or do you feel like the industry is like slowly evolving with what people's expectations are and what the stigma has been?
I honestly feel like a lot of it is because my bosses are women, and that they kind of stop the negativity and the toxicity before it even like gets to me, which I think is really awesome. So, because I feel like, you know, even though I haven't had this recent experience, when I'm talking to other women devs who are kind of having a hard time with being talked over all the time, for instance, or their bosses not really taking their concerns seriously, you know, that's where it can become just a very, very unfortunate and just make the workplace really, really miserable because you have to prove yourself more than you should have to. You should have people behind your back, and you shouldn't have to prove that, oh, I feel this way, they're making me uncomfortable. You shouldn't have to prove that you're uncomfortable. They should be behind your back and nipping it in the butt. So yeah.
So obviously I fall into the category of the stereotypical IT guy, because I'm the middle-aged white guy. But I want my daughter to grow up in a world where she's not afraid to go into an industry that she's passionate about because she thinks that it's being dominated by, whatever category. So what, from your vantage point, what can people who look and are like me, what can we do to help support women in the tech industry? What can we do to help support persons of color or people who don't necessarily fall into that stereotypical group to make people feel more included and more welcomed, and like you're not being looked down on or judged because of those things? How can we stand up and be advocates?
Honestly, I think it is as simple as, calling things out when you see it. And really, just calling that toxicity out when you see it, because, I know there's a lot of huge things you can do, but sometimes it's as simple as making it a habit of like, oh, if you see some fellow male that might be treating someone different that does not look like them, like, making an assumption about them, like not giving them a chance to talk, not giving them a chance to share their idea, not giving them a chance to just be a part of the group. I think it's as simple as calling that out when you see it, and making sure that that person knows it's not cool to do, because that's part of the issue, right? That all that's like normalized. So people don't even might not even know they're doing it because they're so used to doing it. But obviously sometimes they do. But just calling that out, and also continuing to support groups that, organizations and nonprofit organizations that are really trying to bring young adults into science and tech, or any field that is mostly male dominated. I know there is Black Girls Code, obviously, who is really, really doing a really great job of exposing science and tech at an early age to young Black girls rather, and just making sure they know it's available to them, because not everyone knows that. And I'm very fortunate because my dad was into that. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
So, and I wouldn't have known that, oh, I do like that stuff.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think showing your support and, standing up for people is like the two major things, like, and especially like in your everyday life. If you see something, you should definitely call it out to that person. So yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how many, I try to be mindful and kind of look back, have I been in a situation where something happened and I didn't say anything? Because I think one of the problems is that, you have scenarios that happen and maybe it doesn't necessarily, trigger anything in somebody's mind, but I think it's retraining ourselves to be more aware of the language that's being used, or somebody's tone, or like you're saying, somebody talking over you and not giving you the opportunity to speak or something like that. I think that there's a retraining that has to happen, and I think the more of that we're able to accomplish, and the more normalized it becomes for somebody to say, hey, stop the bull crap, you need to shut up and let so-and-so talk, or what you said was completely inappropriate and that's not going to be tolerated here. I think it has a lot to do with the culture that is set, and I think that I'm hopeful that the more that we have conversations like this with people who are coming into science and tech and other industries like this. I'm hopeful that as we move forward, that those things that have so long been normalized will no longer be normal. You know?
Right. Yeah.
And so gosh, I could sit here and chat all day long. I love chatting with you. I greatly appreciate you being here. I do want to take some questions from chat if anybody has some questions. We do have one from Half Pint. Half Pint wants to know, do you DJ at clubs?
Oh no. I'm mostly a radio DJ. It'd be cool
Only
though
radio.
to DJ at clubs, but yeah, I mostly just do radio. I make appearances on GimmeMetal.com. I have my Mixcloud page where I put together my own mini metal mixtapes. And yeah, that's mostly the extent of DJing I do right now. I might start doing radio station, my local radio station, get involved with that again. But yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've never done DJing. This was a really dumb job. So like when I was 16, I got like one of the stereotypical jobs, and I worked at a skating rink.
Oh.
In Texas, and I was what was called the floor guard. So I got paid to literally skate in circles and play music and play games. And I thought it was like one of the funnest things, because it's like, at the time I was like, I control the music, I play what I want. And so like I would do goofy stuff, and I'm like, all right, for the next hour, we're going to play nothing but 80s music. Y'all are going to have to put up with it.
Exactly.
So just like closing thoughts, like anybody who is watching this and they're like saying to themselves, I want to get into coding, but I don't have a traditional background. Like, what advice would you have for somebody who wants to get into coding? Like, where would you point them towards?
I would definitely, I think one of the most important aspects of my journey, even though mine isn't like straight up, oh, I have no alignment to tech, because, I do have a degree in IT. And I did kind of grow up on that stuff. But, I will say that I definitely didn't need my degree for my current job. I'm not really using it, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think the major thing here with getting started is to find a community, find a group to get involved in, of other people who are trying to do the same things you do. Like Code Newbie, they have a community. There's a lot of local Philadelphia communities of like, women who are learning to code, who want to career transition. And especially like depending on the sector of tech that you're looking into, you might want to just do some research and find communities based on that. And also, of course, Free Code Camp has their own individual communities based on what city that you're in as well. So I think that is honestly, like, since it was a huge game changer for me, because that was the most important thing, it kept me motivated, it kept me accountable, and it got me introduced to my current boss. So all that light, unintentional networking. But as well, I will mention Free Code Camp again. They do have a really great intro to coding in general. It's free, obviously. You honestly don't need to spend money. I will say you don't need to spend money to learn web development, or whatever sector that you choose. You can if you want to, but it is totally possible without it.
Absolutely.
I didn't go to a boot camp. I actually did a fellowship, which was, it was free, but basically in a nutshell, a fellowship was something I was selected for. And it allowed me to shadow a developer at an agency, kind of see what they did while completing a big project at the end of the fellowship. So that kind of got me into some insight into what it would be like to work for an agency, and what kind of work you do, what the day-to-day is. So there are things like that. There are free fellowships, free mentorship. So just keep that in mind. Even though you can do boot camp if you really want to spend that money, you don't have to. There are a lot of resources and a lot of people that are willing to help you get to where you are.
One thing that these are a little harder to find, but every once in a while you can find a program that will actually give you sponsorships for boot camp style programs like that. So that's another thing that I would encourage people to look for if you are in a situation where you want to learn but you don't have money for something that's formal like that. Obviously, like Ebony was saying, you don't have to pay a lot of money. All of the resources that you would need to put this together are available on the internet. But a lot of times going through something that's like a more structured, formalized class tends to be a lot easier for somebody. So UK Mad LZ did have a question, and I'm going to throw it up on the screen here. What was your proudest Eureka dev moment? That thing that you thought was a mountain that you did?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's a good question.
Man, I feel like I've at least have one every 6 months. But let me try to think of one. I think my Eureka moment came, one of them came when I was working on a JavaScript project, and it really kind of made me understand, because basically a lot of the JavaScript functionality that I do for work is searching, filtering, sorting, because we're working mostly with websites, and if they have a lot of content, if it's a directory, if it's like a list of resources, you want to be able to search, filter, and sort. So a lot of the trouble that I was having with that lied in the order of execution, not really understanding how that came together, things being hidden before I wanted them to be, things appearing before I wanted them to be, being able to continuously click the button and then break it because it's kind of lost and in a weird place. And so learning the order of execution, learning how event listeners work, learning call stack and the, what is it called? I'm still kind of not that great at it, but learning how JavaScript handles all of the statements and how event listeners come into play and how the call stack is organized and how all of that works. Learning that and understanding that made me a much better JavaScript developer, because now I understood how things work together, understood where to diagnose the problem, and I understood where I needed to kind of safeguard and keep certain things from getting out of order. Even though I'm not really good with the terms yet, definitely not good with the terms yet, but that I definitely had a Eureka moment that way.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people understand how complicated JavaScript truly is. Mm-hmm. And especially if you're doing anything with, if you're using like a JavaScript framework like React or, something like that, understanding how state management works and understanding things like the virtual DOM and, you start digging into stuff like that, it gets really, really complicated really quick. And so I have a nice reverent fear of JavaScript because of that, just because it's like, there's so many ways that you can possibly mess it up.
Right.
That, you can do a lot of stuff with JavaScript, but you can also screw up a lot of stuff with JavaScript.
Yeah. I'll mention one more thing that I think I literally spent a day on the first time I encountered it. It's I think I was trying to add an event listener to a element that was being dynamically added. And so I spent like almost a day trying to figure out why you couldn't find it. And then I realized that obviously, because it's not already on the page and that was being loaded on JavaScript, one JavaScript was running, you needed to kind of do it a different way. I think using the on function and then, just listening on the document versus listening on that specific thing. So that was definitely one of the first major Eureka moments. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got this. I understand.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things that I've had to learn is like feeling like you don't know anything until you actually like go back and you start like reflecting on the stuff that you've accomplished. So one of my teammates started this amazing thing this year where she has like a weekly reflection that she writes up, and she talks about like who she talked to, the stuff that she accomplished, what worked, what didn't work, and then the things that she learned throughout the week. Mm-hmm. And she just writes it up in a Google Doc or whatever. And so this is something that I've adopted. And I was having a conversation with a family member last night about, they're trying to do like a .NET getting started exercise or whatever. And they're like, I just don't know how to do this. And it basically, like, you talk to somebody who's brand new and it takes you all the way back to the beginning of your journey. And you remember exactly what it was like. And I remember sitting at my desk and I'm like, 20 years old and I'm beating my head against the keyboard because I can't get the stupid C++ compiler to compile my crap. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And it's like, I've been doing this for 8 hours and all of this kind of stuff. And I think that, we have to get to that point where we, take those opportunities to kind of reflect on, oh, I did build this. Oh, I did accomplish this. Oh, I do, know these things and stuff. So, Eboniie, thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure getting to catch up and chat with you.